Joining us live now to discuss is NBC News military analyst, retired four-star Army General Barry McCaffrey. General, first, your reaction to this post from the president of this ceasefire deal between Israel and Iran.
Well, we can only hope that it holds. Certainly there's been an odd reaction in that neither Iran nor Israel have made comments on it. So it may be President Trump somewhat front-running the process. However, how wars end in the long term are more consequential than how they began. And it seems to me that Iran desperately needs an off-ramp. They've lost most of their air defense. They're depleting their offensive capability against Israel. Half the country despises this theocratic dictatorship. They have no allies. And that attack on Saturday night on their nuclear facilities undoubtedly created devastating long-term damage to a multi-billion-dollar set of installations. The Israelis, in turn, are running out of their high-tech self-defense missiles. So it may be a good time to off-ramp, and I hope this is what happens in the coming 24 hours.
And so not only is it the question of whether the ceasefire can hold, but do you think it could lead to Iran agreeing to end its nuclear program, which so far we have no evidence that the bombing of those sites by the U.S. were effective in eliminating or obliterating the program altogether?
Well, clearly you cannot stop a nuclear program unless you have a signed treaty and inspectors on the ground. So that's got to be the goal. In the short run, the Iranians will try and weasel out of that. They've had a more than 3-decade-long commitment to a nuclear weapon. They've had a 46-year commitment to erasing the nation of Israel. So somehow they have to back off that. In the short run, we want them to agree to no HEU enrichment and inspectors back on the ground. But none of this will be settled until they can somehow reconcile the destruction of Israel and their need for an offensive nuclear capability.
In terms of public opinion and then strategic viewpoints, is this a win for the Trump administration?
Oh, no question. If it holds, this was a use of deception and surprise and a very aggressive U.S. Air Force and Navy attack on Iran's nuclear facilities. I am sure it did have a very consequential impact on them. Now, admittedly, the 900 pounds of 60% enriched HEU have undoubtedly been moved somewhere else. I doubt that was destroyed. But in terms of an overall setback, it was simply daring, bold, and decisive. Now, can we get them back to the table to a negotiated settlement, which includes zero HEU enrichment?
Long term, what are America's allies saying about the impact of the U.S. strike on Iran? It appears that the EU wasn't even involved in the decision that the United States made to bomb Iran.
Yeah, well, one of the major weaknesses of national security has been President Trump's disregard for our allies, NATO, Japan, South Korea, Australia. He never got the point that it's not just our military power and economic strength, it's the people who respected our values. Now, having said that, the only allies that are important in ending this whole operation are number one, Israel, and number two, the Arab Sunni states, Saudi Arabia, the Gulf Coast states, Jordan, Egypt. They are secretly delighted with both the military strike and with the direction toward an off-ramp and some kind of ceasefire. We'll have to see whether this holds, Joyce. You know, this is perilous business still. The dictatorship in Iran has been immovable for decades on seeking a nuclear weapon. It's going to be hard to get this to stick, but it's good news. Let's accept it for what it is.
What are the immediate challenges as you look forward? What should we expect?
Well, I think that the first thing that's got to happen is they've got to stop shooting at each other, and that'd be a major good. The Israelis are taking some pounding, Fortunately, their loss of life and the number wounded, they're around 1,000 plus civilians killed or injured, has been relatively light. They have suffered substantial damage, and I think the Israeli Defense Forces are worried about wearing down their defensive Iron Dome system and the other longer range defensive missiles. Conversely, it's going to be tough on the Iranians to not accept this deal. They're really in a barrel. If they tried to close, the easiest thing they do is close oil flowing out to the Persian Gulf. That would immediately alienate the Chinese. Much of the Asian nations get a substantial part of their oil from Iran, or certainly out to the Persian Gulf. So
Right.
I think both sides ought to breathe a sigh of relief and ought to find some way to accept certainly the ceasefire and then come to terms on longer-term negotiated settlements.
Hopefully you are right, and they will be back to the negotiating table. General Barry McCaffrey, always so grateful for your time and your analysis on this. Thank you.
Good to be with you, Joyce.